Well, we have an exciting update to the Idaho Medical Freedom Act, one of the most sweeping medical freedom bills in the country that prohibits nearly all medical mandates. Joining us is Leslie Manookian, president of the Health Freedom Defense Fund, a group that successfully challenged the CDC's federal mask mandate and LAUSD's vaccine requirement. Leslie is the author of the Idaho Medical Freedom Act and has been on the front lines of the legal and legislative battle for bodily autonomy and medical choice. Leslie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kim. I think this is one of the most important conversations that we can possibly have today, and that medical freedom is the issue of our time.
So the last update I gave to the audience was that Governor Brad Little he vetoed it. So we had you and Dr. Ryan Cole on the show talking about the bill. Dr. Ryan Cole says if Governor Brad Little didn't sign this, I'm going to campaign against him. I'm going to run for governor. Then I see Governor Brad Little vetoes the bill, and he issued a letter saying the reason he vetoed it was what was his reasoning again?
An utter fabrication. It's truly incredible what he did, but he basically vetoes the bill on Saturday, March 28th or 9th, whatever that Saturday was, literally within an hour or an hour and a half of the time at which the bill would have taken effect. He issues this letter saying, I'm vetoing the bill, the only bill that I think he vetoed during the entire session.
Yeah, that was his only veto during that session. Yeah.
And he's, I'm concerned that we are infringing parental rights to have safe spaces for their children in school because sick children with pink eye or strep throat can't be sent home from school. And that was a pure fabrication because there was nothing in our original bill, which was S-1023, that contravened existing Idaho code, which says that schools can send home sick kids. We didn't even mention it because, of course, sick children can be sent home. But he used that as an excuse. And let me tell you, that was his fatal error, I believe, and why we ended up prevailing after unbelievable machinations.
So he was saying, okay, we want the schools to be able to send sick kids home if they've got lice or pink eye or, all of these different things, which I think any reasonable person says, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But you're saying that's not true. He vetoes it. Then what? Now it is law. He signed it, right? Well, he
signed a new version of it.
Okay. What are the changes in this one?
Yeah, so he vetoed it on Saturday. And then over the weekend, I spoke with our sponsor, Senator Dan Foreman, and he said, listen, we'll go back to him and we'll address his issues. And so I said, great. So in the morning, on Monday morning, I think it was March 31st, I was gathering along with Representative Beiswanger, who was our sponsor in the Idaho House. We got the exact code and said, this legislation, we provided the information to Senator Foreman saying that this code does not violate existing code, which allows children to be sent home who are sick. We provided that information. Senator Foreman went into meetings with the governor's office, and he somehow, I don't know if they pressured him or what happened, but he agreed to insert language that carved out daycares from the bill, meaning that anybody who's in daycare in the state of Idaho, which is almost all children of working parents, we're talking tens of thousands of kids, can be denied access to the daycares as long as they're private if they don't get vaccines. And the reason for that is because they were arguing that private daycares could choose to not honor the vaccine exemptions that are existing in code. So basically, Senator Foreman colluded essentially with the governor's office to offer up children who received the vast majority of all vaccines. And as soon as I heard about that, I didn't hear about it till the afternoon, like 2:15 in the afternoon. I was like, absolutely not. This is evil. Our children are not going to be sacrificed in order to buy our health freedoms. This is outrageous. And I don't want to do this. And he had assured me he wouldn't go forward, but he did anyway. He went forward. He presented the bill in committee, and it had this daycare carve out. And I kept telling him, I don't know what they're doing, but there's some game they're playing. They want this for some specific reason. I don't know why. Well, that evening, I was just heartbroken because I thought, I'm not participating in purchasing my freedom by using children's health and well-being. And I just told him, don't proceed. He went and proceeded anyway. And then Representative Beiswinger and people in the House came and said, don't worry, we'll run our own bill. So then the House introduced its own bill, which was identical to mine, with no daycare exclusion. And it just had the language in it that reassured the governor that schools could, in fact, send sick children home. And it turned into this huge fight. And that's why we won.
So the one that passed does not have the daycare carve out.
No. So basically what happened was, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go, but basically Monday he goes against my wishes. He had promised me he would not add anything without my consent and that he would not move forward. He went and did it anyway. And I was literally just like, have I been betrayed? You know, what's happening? And then I spoke with him on Monday night and he said to me, you know, listen, a lot of people in the governor's office and some of the senior Senate membership believe that children should be vaccinated. And I agree. And I was like, you are going along with this. You're going to literally ransom our children. This is evil. I mean, this is outrageous. So everybody in Idaho gets medical freedom except 3 years old and younger, babies and toddlers. Like, what kind of twisted reality is that? You know, I thought this is outrageous. And so I fought it. Well, I talked to Rob and he said, don't worry, it's not over. It's not over. We're going to introduce our own bill. So then the House introduced its own bill and they actually pushed it through on Wednesday. It went through committee. It went on Tuesday afternoon and then it went to the floor of the House. It went everything. And then they were sending it to the Senate to be voted, to be heard and voted on Thursday. And the Senate said, we won't hear it. So we're going from like, oh my gosh, we've lost to, oh my gosh, there's possibility to, oh my gosh, we've lost again. It was just like up, down, every few minutes, and just some twists and turns. And then what happened on Thursday was Senator Foreman said that he had removed the daycare exception, but we didn't know whether to trust him at this point. And so we were rallying everybody against that bill, Senate Bill 1210. We had anybody and everybody we could saying, kill 1210, support 472, which was the House bill.
Yeah.
And the House said, you know, we're not going to hear 1210 unless you guys want us to. So I'm literally driving home from Boise, talking to House leadership, and they were asking me, you know, do you want to kill the bill? What do you want to do? And I mean, it was so stressful because my calls kept dropping. You know, I'm going through the mountains. It was crazy. And what ended up happening was we thought we were going to have to concede, and we thought that they were going to, we didn't know for sure, but we thought they were going to run a decent bill with 1210. But overnight on Thursday night and Friday morning when I woke up, I spoke with the assistant House Majority Leader, Josh Tanner, who's your representative if you live in Idaho in that area.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, this isn't over. What do you want? What do you want me to put in here? And so he, on Friday morning, the last day of the session, helped us to insert that parochial schools could send sick kids home, which was not a big deal at all. But two huge things. Number one is that healthy, unvaccinated individuals cannot be excluded in any way when there's a disease outbreak. This is the stick that schools held over parents' heads and actually had led to some kids taking their own lives. So there was I'll tell you in a second, but basically, so if you're sick, if you are healthy and you are unvaccinated and there are other sick kids around, that's not grounds to exclude you, which is the way that the law was. No state in the nation has that law. And that was inserted on Friday morning. And then the other thing was that no rules can be issued by any state agencies or code adopted by the legislative branch that contradicts this code, which means that even if Brad Little, the governor, issues an executive order for an emergency declaration, there can be no implementation of it. We can never again be forced to mask, shove swabs up our noses, take any kind of medicine, drug, vaccination, or anything like that. And I think because of the fact that the House did what they did, they had the final say, inserted this language, and then it was on the Senate's back. You know, are you going to approve this on Friday or not? And then on the governor to sign it. And we basically gave the governor what he wanted, and what he first requested when the initial bill was vetoed. So how was he going to say no now?
Right.
So he was basically back to the corner.
Mm-hmm. So explain to us what this means. Like, had this been around during COVID, what would have been different?
Everything, Kim. everything. Had this been around during COVID, no one could have forced you to stick a swab up your nose to prove that you were, not unclean, right? They couldn't just walk up and shove an infrared thing in your face like they did to me. They couldn't escort you out of the grocery store for not having a mask on like they did to my 82-year-old father. They couldn't deny you medical treatment on the basis of your vaccination status. They couldn't deny you access to a grocery store or a hotel or a restaurant. They couldn't fire you. They couldn't coerce you into taking the shot. Your rights would be 100% protected. So, have you heard of the man Doug Cameron? He's an Idahoan who worked for a dairy in the Mountain Home area. He's this just lovely man, Kim. He was actually a friend of my father's for 20 or 30 years, and he worked for a dairy. The owner of the dairy had cancer during COVID, and the owner was afraid, and so he wanted all of his employees to get the shot. And he went to Doug and he said, I want all your team, 100 people under you to get the shot. And Doug said, well, I'm not getting the shot. I don't want to get the shot. And he's like, well, Doug, you need to set an example for all the people who work under you. You need to get that shot. And he's like, I don't want to. Well, Doug took it in order to keep his job. And he's paralyzed from the diaphragm down and will sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life while his boss is dead and gone. And so that could never have happened had this bill been in place, and it will never happen again. So you do not have to submit to any kind of a medical intervention in order to live a normal life in Idaho ever again.
So for those who are the critics of this, those who say, well, but deadly outbreak, what would be the control mechanism for the state in the event of a deadly outbreak?
I think that the point is that there is no control mechanism anymore. And the reason for that is that I think that there's a problem. We have misconstrued public health for a long time. Public health has somehow seeped into private health where it doesn't belong. Public health should exist and originally did exist to keep the public spaces clean, right? It used to be that there was open sewage in the streets. Public health handled that. It used to be that there was dirty drinking water and people got cholera and super sick from drinking all that garbage. It used to be that people just dumped their garbage and let their animals roam in the streets. All those things were remedied. And as those things were remedied during the early part of the 20th century, the mortality from infectious diseases fell 90%, nearly 90%, 89%, before the widespread use of antibiotics or vaccinations. So this was all attributable to these public health measures. And those are good measures. We don't want corporations releasing toxic effluent into our rivers and streams or dumping it on our public lands. That's where public health should be. But public health shouldn't be able to force any individual to harm themselves in order to engage in normal life or to serve the theoretical benefit of someone else. So I have no problem if someone is sick and they're told to go home, or a business says, look, you're clearly very ill. I'm not going to let you in right now. An employer says, you're clearly sick. Go home. You're not welcome today. Wait until you're better. That's all good. But when the government or arms of the government, which is what happened with the businesses, start to tell you what you can and can't do. I mean, we had to show vaccine papers in order to get into just the venue that conducts all of the different performances and big meetings here. We couldn't attend. We couldn't go to public meetings that were held at the Limelight Hotel. We couldn't go to the Y. I had friends who were fired from Zenergy, the gym where they worked, and they'd been there for 20 years, great employees. So those things can't happen anymore. Clearly, I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, it's very, very clear. I and I alone know what my medical history is. I and I alone know what's best for me medically, and I alone have to live with the consequences of my medical choices. So how can anyone else presume to know what's best for me?
So what I'm just trying to understand is what is very clearly what this prevents, but what it also allows. Because I think there are a lot of business owners that are like, look, if somebody shows up and they're clearly sick, I want to be able to I don't want them ruining my business, sitting in my cafe, coughing, clearly, got pox all over them, if they got monkey pox, whatever it is, right? I don't want them sitting there and ruining my business. So I think there's that sentiment. But what I'm hearing, and so correct me if I'm wrong, that this doesn't allow any sort of forcing by a private entity or by the government into any sort of medical intervention, which would include a vaccine. Obviously, that's a medical, being forced into a medical intervention like a vaccine. A mask would be a medical intervention. You cannot be forced to wear a mask or be forced to take a test, which is a medical. These are all medical interventions. Whereas saying, look, I'm going to send you home because I don't want you here. I'm not going to serve you. You got monkeypox. Is that am I interpreting this correctly? Okay.
So here's the thing. This is a great example. Okay. And some of the people who were criticizing the legislation said, pink eye, super lies. Kids are going to come to school and they can't be forced to go home and use antibiotics. They can be excluded. They can be told to go home, but they can't be forced to use antibiotics. That's correct. So the first part is correct, that they can be sent home. The second part is not correct because there are lots of ways to heal strep throat. There are lots of ways to deal with head lice. You don't have to take an antibiotic, but those people who are critiquing it, they want to be able to force antibiotics. And that's wrong. So there are lots of ways. I never used antibiotics on my son. I healed him from conjunctivitis overnight with homeopathic remedies. The point is they want to dictate that you have to use antibiotics. They can't do that anymore. They can send the child home. The business owner can say, I'm sorry, but you're clearly very ill with monkeypox or something else. Would you please go home? If someone is obviously ill, but they were like, well, what if someone comes in with measles? And this is also a little bit ridiculous. Show me one business owner who can diagnose the measles, Kim.
Right. I mean, there's people that look ill who are, I have friends who have conditions that are genetic conditions that look, when you first glance at them, you might think, oh, this person's ill because they've got something on their skin. But in reality, it's just a skin issue that is not contagious. That's not, it's so, right. Yeah. So the point stands. The person walks in and you're sitting there like, I see measles or monkeypox. And the person's like, no, that's not what this is. This is just the way I look.
And it would be practicing medicine without a license as well, which is, prohibited. So it's really clear that no state entity, no private business, no school, no venue, no one can condition participation, access, employment on receipt or use of a medical intervention. So yes, they can send someone who is clearly sick home or deny them, but they can't mandate what the treatment or therapeutic is that the person uses in order to remedy the situation. That's on the person, on the individual.
Can a business now under this law, can a business also say no vaccine, no service? Like if you cannot prove vaccination status, we won't let you in.
No. That's exactly the point, is that they can't condition access to their services or their goods, their premises on the receipt of a vaccination. So no more papers, please, for anything.
Because that would be saying you must get this medical treatment in order. That's like forcing the medical treatment, and that's what this is protecting people against.
That's what happened where I live. Literally, I couldn't go to the Arduous Center, which is where speakers are brought in, performance artists, plays, all sorts of things. You could not go there without papers, please. The Limelight Hotel, they checked papers at the door, even though they were holding public kinds of events with the city and things like that. You couldn't attend.
Yeah.
And so this is just crazy. This
is great. This is a huge win. And this is this is the first state to do it, my own state of Idaho. Which is great. I mean, and I'm moving back in a week, so I'm happy to hear that I'm going to be coming back to a freedom state. What about, are other states, are you being contacted by other states to draft similar legislation?
Well, what we're doing, Kim, is we are going to, we're actually in the process already of transforming this into a model bill that can be used in all states. And we're creating a package of information, like a packet that people can use in the individual states to try and pursue this on their own.
Wow.
So we're going to do a nationwide rollout in the not too distant future. But this has all happened very fast, and I've been doing lots of media around it. So we're not finalized on that, but that's going to happen. I think in the next week or 2 weeks, people can be checking on the Health Freedom Defense Fund website, which is healthfreedomdefense.org, under our resources tab, and you will find the packet most likely there is where we'll be putting it. So,
this prevents even municipalities from overriding these.
No one.
So they're not allowed at all anywhere in the state.
no arm of the state may contradict this code. It's
Wow,
written
that's
in
great.
there.
That's
Literally.
great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And the
Idaho's
thing
done
for
some.
me,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just ask, I feel it's very clear to me that we and we alone need to make our medical decisions and live with them. And this is a conversation that I think that everybody should really be thinking about. We're always told, oh, and during COVID, save grandma, protect grandma, do all these things. But the thing is that really moral? Is it ever moral to ask one person to sacrifice themselves for the theoretical benefit of another?
Right.
To me, the primacy of the individual is everything, and society is only made up by individuals. And so why would you ever force one to harm themselves or to risk themselves? If they want to do it voluntarily, I have no problem with that. But force is the problem. And there
Right.
is no informed consent when there is coercion. So
Yeah.
I want to have a nationwide conversation about this issue.
Yeah. Idaho's been passing some other interesting legislation. The ivermectin over the counter. They just passed that one, but that's not. Did that get through both chambers? Is that sitting on the governor's desk, or is that just through one chamber at this point?
I think it was signed into law on Friday.
Wow,
wasn't
really?
it? I think so. I'm quite sure.
that
But yeah,
up.
there were several, Kim, that were signed into law. The
Interesting.
Medical Freedom Act was the very last bill that Governor Little signed of the legislative session. But
The
there were
last I
others there.
see 5 days ago, all I see is that the Idaho bill on ivermectin sale awaits governor's decision. That was 5 days ago, but I don't know if there's an update to that, but that would be to sell it over the counter, which would be also very different than the rest of the country.
Yeah. Well, there are
So
I think
great.
2 other states have it now. I feel like that passed, but I could be wrong. But I think Senator Tammy Nichols was sponsoring that bill, and I thought that it prevailed, but I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure though it passed.
Well, this is all really good news. I mean, it's great to see that there is some. I'm so glad, Leslie, and thank you so much. Honestly, thank you so much for working on this. So many of us have had to move on from COVID, and there's so much going on in the world. We're focused now. Our focus has moved, and we need people like you who have not moved the focus, and you are now protecting us for the future. When a lot of people have, we went through the pandemic. It was awful. We say never, we never want to go through that again. But then we've just moved on with our lives. Many of us just desperately needing to move on with our lives after that trauma, right? So it's so great to have fighters like you who are actually still out there saying, I didn't forget, I'm still fighting. We've now made progress. And it is a huge win that now Idaho is a full-on freedom state in this way, that the pandemic would have been totally and completely different had this been a bill and signed into law. And it's just great to know that in the event of the next pandemic, which many of us feel is inevitable, that they're going to pull this on us again, it is nice to know that there is a freedom state in the union. Hopefully there'll be more than one, because I would prefer if not everybody moved into Idaho and crowded the place. But it just really, I know I speak for a lot of people watching right now. Thank you so much, and keep fighting. Thank you.
I will. I absolutely will. And there was one representative, Kim, that I presented the bill in both the Senate and the House. And this one representative said to me, is there anywhere that's still doing this in Idaho? Like, why do we need this? And I said, we need this right now while it's still fresh in your minds, so that never again is where we end up. We need this because we need to safeguard against it ever happening again. And if we wait 5 years, it's not going to happen because people will forget. So today is the time. This is the issue of our time. I truly believe in medical freedom. And I'm just, I feel just unbelievably blessed to serve and to help protect fellow Idahoans for the future. And I believe that Idaho is going to be the shining light of freedom on the hill. So I'm super excited about what's to come in the state of Idaho in the coming years. And I just appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you could catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, by going to KimIversonShow.com. You'll catch it live. It is free to watch. 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. See you there.